Good afternoon. My name is Sadia Gauthier, and for today's training, we're going to be talking about program for infant and toddler care, but more specifically, the PITC approach. So the first thing we're going to be asking is what is program for infant and toddler care? And the program for infant and toddler care is a program that is focused on assisting centers and family child care providers to implement high quality infant and toddler care. The main key thing in that statement is high quality. It's not just about providing child care for infants and toddlers. It's about providing high quality child care. So PITC focuses on how you can make it that high quality. The next question is why. Why is it important? Why is PITC important? Why is it relevant? Why is it necessary? Number one, there's a high demand and a low supply. 55.4% of women who have children are employed. There's a high rate, like demand rate for childcare for ages 0 to 3. And there's a low supply. So there is only about 6% of childcare that is directed or geared towards children the ages of 0 to 3. So that's where the low supply comes in. There's a high demand because there's 55.4% of women who are mothers and have children and that are employed, but there's only 6% of childcare providers for ages 0 to 3. Another thing is there's a high percentage of damaging rate. Out of the childcare providers, there is only 10% of those childcare providers, only 10% of their programs are considered to be developmentally appropriate. Only 10%. That's a very low percent. Honestly, that's a very low percent. But the last question is how. Going back, how can you, a working professional in an infant and toddler care program, you're an infant and toddler care provider, how can you get that high quality or provide that high quality infant and toddler care to a child and their family? How can you as a professional, how can you as a child care provider center, a caregiver, how can you give that high quality care to an infant and toddler? Number one is professional development. That's why everyone's here to be abreast on and be knowledgeable on the information about the program for infant and toddler care. Be knowledgeable about different effective strategies and different ways that you can be a better professional and a better care provider. And then another thing is training. There's no such thing as too much training. The more you know, the more you grow. And so there may be things in one training that you may have not known or you may have already known, but it's just expounded more in depthly. So those are some of the things that we're looking at. Well, we looked at the what. What is it? Why is it relevant? Why is it necessary? And how can you become a better child care provider and provide more high quality child care for an infant and toddler program? The PITC approach to curriculum is a two-step part. Number one, you have to put yourself in the child's position. You cannot effectively provide any type of care for anyone or instruction or anything, no matter what level it is, unless you first put yourself in that person's shoes. And in this case, that would be the infant or the toddler. You have to put yourself in their shoes. And then secondly, you have to be knowledgeable. You have to be knowledgeable about the field. You have to be knowledgeable about resources. And you also bring your prior background or experiences to the field. And then that helps you formulate your next interaction with the child. There are 10 attributes of infant and toddler care development on which the PITC approach is based. Number one, relationships are essential for development. That is number one for a reason. The most critical relationship that infants have is with their mother. And that particular relationship, it sets the stage for their developmental progress. If an infant has a relationship with their mother where it's interactive, it's engaging, then that sets them on the path of great developmental success. Because research has shown that when the mother-infant or the mother-child relationship is damaged, that can set infants and children back developmentally. It can set them back physically, cognitively, behaviorally. It can set them back in a number of ways. So the relationships are definitely essential for development. But it's not only the mother-child relationship, it's also the care provider-child-family relationship. So it's like a triage. The mother-child relationship is number one, first and foremost, the most important. But as a child care provider, the relationship is important between the child care provider, the child, and the family. Number two, infants learn holistically. That is most definitely true. It's not about, when looking at infancy and toddler, let's see. When looking, like, you should look, it's as a whole. You can't feed one thing without tending to another. So you have to look at it from a whole perspective. When it comes to holistic, infancy consists of 3 broad stages. There are 3 stages of infancy. And the reason why there are 3 stages of infancy, because infancy is so broad. Most people think that it just jumps from infancy to toddler and then it just keeps going. No. Infancy is broken down into 3 stages. It's broken down into young infant, mobile infant, and older infant. And the reason being is that because there are so many things that are developmentally going on with an infant, that it's so much going on. It doesn't occur simultaneously. The development that is going on in an infant, it just doesn't happen all at one time. So, for example, babies don't crawl at the same time they're learning to speak. They're both occurring in infancy, yes, but they're occurring at 2 different time intervals of infancy. So that's why infancy consists of 3 broad stages, because there are different things going on in different stages of infancy. Language acquisition begins around 9 months, between 9 to 14 months. Language acquisition. Okay, but crawling is comes in the stage before language acquisition. Language acquisition would be falling in the older infant stages, versus mobile infant could be crawling or walking, because 15% of infants do not crawl before they walk. So that's why crawling is not considered a developmental milestone, because 15% of kids don't crawl. They just go walking. So, but crawling or walking would be in the mobile infant, and that's vastly different from language acquisition, which would be considered in the latter part or the older infant stages. So that's why infancy is broken up into 3 stages, because there's so much going on developmentally that it's not all happening simultaneously. Number 4, infants are active and self-motivated learners. Number 1, they are definitely active. That's why it's always important to have that interaction and engagement piece, because you have to understand what an infant, what a child, what their needs are, what their interests are, and you have to understand all of these, because then that would help you make decisions as what type of care to provide for that particular child. Number 5, infants differ from one another. Going back to what I just said, no two children are the same. No two adults are the same. No two dogs, cats, fish, rats, whatever. No two infants are the same either. They're two completely different people. So you can't have a universal child care for every infant in your program. You can't. The care has to be individualistic. You have to know what they need. You have to know what they want. You have to know what they like. All of those things, and most importantly, you have to know how they learn. That helps drive what type, and that helps you know what type of care best suits that particular child. And you can't then go use that because it works for that child. You can't say, oh, it works for this child, so it's going to work for that one. No, that doesn't work. Because no two infants are the same. You have to treat each one as their own individual, because indeed they are. Number 6, infants develop their first sense of self through contact with others. That goes back to number 1. They develop their first interactions, the mother-child relationship, or the primary care guardian or caregiver child relationship. That is where they develop their first sense of self, and also their first sense of self-worth. Number 7, home culture and family are a fundamental part of child's developmental identity. That is true. And as a child care provider, it is important to have a relationship with that family, because you cannot give proper care to an infant without knowing their background, without knowing, oh, this child comes from a low socioeconomic status, income. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. You need, it's not even about statistics of a child's background. You need to know the relationships of, does the relationship of the child and the mother, the relationship of the child and their other siblings. You need to know all of that things as a child care provider. Number 8, language skills and habits develop early. Like I said, language acquisition happens between 9 and 14 months. Language acquisition happens early. Children acquire language through listening before actually speaking. So that is important for every child care provider to know, because just because children aren't speaking does not mean they're not learning. They listen and they acquire language through listening first. Number 9, development environments are powerful. That is very true. One of the most critical curriculum components are that often not plain lessons. Like the highest point is, like, it's not plain lessons, but it's a planned setting. So plan the setting, but don't come in with like a lesson plan. We're going to do this, that for the child. Plan the setting, set the parameters, and then allow that interaction with the child to drive your next step. Number 10, caregiving routines are prime avenues for infant and toddler learning. The PITC course of study, there are 4 domains. 4 domains of social. The first one is social emotional development. The second is cognitive development. The third is language development. And the last is motor and perceptual development. The PITC, they integrate these 4 particular domains. They integrate information about the 4 domains with information on group care practices. And group care practices, they help develop you as a child care provider for infant and a toddler. And the training modules are social emotional growth and socialization, group care, which is program policies that support relatives, that triage of a relationship between the child care provider, and the family. Learning and development, which focuses on the child's interests and their urge to learn and their needs. 4, cultural family and providers. And number 5, caring for infants and toddlers with disabilities and other special needs. PITC strongly emphasizes inclusion. So there are a plethora of training with PITC.